Well, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for coming. A little after 6, we'll get started. My name is John Wigman. I'm project manager with Wright Pierce, and with me here today is Tom Erico with TY Lynn, Nate Edwards with Wright Pierce as well, one of our engineers. We have Emma McInerney from the town, Kevin Sutherland from town manager, and Michael Marchone, the planner for the town. And we also have here Steve Cole from DOT. There you go. So I'll just give a quick overview of the presentation.
Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission.
Right.
Emily Rabi was supposed to be here tonight to help facilitate the conversation. Fortunately, she has some ill children, so she's home addressing those needs. So
Right.
Jan has offered to step up and help facilitate
With
this.
the introductions. So, yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention Emily, and she's certainly a key part of this overall partnership. This is a project that's we're looking at the downtown village of Newcastle. And it's a partnership between DOT and the town and Lincoln County Regional Planning to kind of bring together consultants and look at what we can do with the downtown to what we can do from a transportation perspective in the downtown to spur some economic development and create a better or an atmosphere that is more pedestrian friendly and could spur some potential economic benefits. So our presentation tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the traffic study that's been conducted that TY Lin has done, Tom and TY Lin. And then we're going to talk about some potential road improvements and some potential intersection improvements. So the roads would be Main Street and Mills Road. And the intersection, there's really two intersections. The River Road Main Street intersection out here is node 1. And node 2 is the Main Street, Mills Road and Academy Hill Road intersection. But we're going to talk about some potential ideas as to what to do there. And then on the road sections, it's Main Street. We're looking at Main Street from the Academy Hill Road to the bridge in Damascotta. What can we do there? We've got a couple of different alternatives. And then we also have done some concepts from the River Road intersection down to the Academy Hill Road. And then we also have a concept for Mills Road. And we had back in the spring, we had a similar public meeting to kind of gather input as to what was important to the community. What sort of things would we want to consider, or what things are important in these traffic improvements? What does the town want to see in terms of traffic calming? What economic prospect, what kind of economic type development you want to spur in the town itself. So we've taken all those things and we kind of put your thoughts and taken our thoughts on traffic and transportation, kind of put some ideas together. And we wanted to present those to you tonight. At the end, there's no free meeting here. We have some discussion questions. So we have some particular, we want input on, which options or which features you like best out of some of these different options. And some other questions that we have that really want your input on. And so at the end, there will be some discussion like that. We do to make sure we get through the entire presentation. If you could hold your questions till just before then, and then we'll get into those discussion points. If you have a really, really pressing need for a question, like a clarification of which direction or what are we talking about here, please raise your hand so that you get the most out of the presentation. So that's the introduction. Again, it's a partnership between Maine DOT. I think I've gone through these already. And the overall study area, if you look over here, we just touched on that as well. Kind of got ahead of myself here with the slides, or ahead of the slides. But again, there's 2 traffic nodes. And then there's stretches of road, Mills Road and Main Street that we're looking at. Potential improvements, including on-street parking and pedestrian type improvements. With that, we're going to get into the traffic study. I'll have Mr. Erico take that.
Figured I'll come up here, that way I could kind of walk everybody through sort of the details of the traffic study. Again, my name is Tom Erico. I work for a company called TY Lin. We're based in Falmouth. I'm a traffic engineer and complete streets engineer. So I like to look at roads holistically, making sure that it works for everybody, car, people on foot, biking, parking management, all those things sort of, and you'll see sort of get sort of incorporated into sort of the plan that we develop. And so one of the first things we try to understand are volumes, like how much traffic is basically going through these intersections. And so, we actually, with the help from, the Department of Transportation, collected information at those two intersections. So Main Street at Academy Hill and Main at River. And so this first graphic, basically hard to read, but I'll walk you through it, basically summarizes volumes during the morning time period and the afternoon time period. Typically, those are the time periods that we look at, sort of the lineup with like commuter time periods. A little bit different here. Peak hours are a little bit later in the morning, 9:45 to 10:45, and slightly earlier, 2:45 to 3:45 in the afternoon. Typically, I see in urban areas, 7:30, 8:30, 4:30, 5:30, but you know, this is what's happening here. There's likely a probably slightly earlier peak associated with, you know, the school, and particularly Academy Hill. I don't think that's gonna influence, you know, basically what's going on from, you know, from a volume perspective. So at the River Road intersection, I'm just gonna walk you through some of these numbers coming from basically Academy Hill and, you know, from sort of downtown. In the morning, there's 370 cars that are basically approaching the intersection to go south on Route 1 in the morning, and 450 vehicles in the PM peak hour. And then of those, 90 turn left onto River Road in the morning, and 118 turn left on the River Road during the PM peak
Do
hour.
those numbers line up with the periods in the table, or is those?
They line up with the table.
Okay,
Those,
great.
those are consistent with the table. So if when you look at this, I think we provided copies of this, so you can check it, and so they line up. Sometimes I like to just show graphically, it's just easier to sort of follow. Not gonna go through all these numbers, but that tells us a lot. There's quite frankly, not a lot of traffic going left off of River Road headed to Route 1. You would have gone to Route 1 down River Road if you were gonna go south. So, you know, fundamentally, most people are coming River Road going towards downtown and Damascata, 147 in the morning, and then 130 to 138 in, you know, in the PM peak hour. So basically, what I'm gonna tell you, these are not big numbers. These numbers are manageable. And you'll see it when we start talking about the alternatives that the alternatives will work regardless of, you know, what, you know, the volumes will work with either alternative. All right, next slide. So this is Academy Hill Mills, and a little bit different from a volume perspective, and you all know it better than I. It's a complex, crazy intersection, probably why we're here. You know, I think, you know, basically it's funky. Again, same sort of count period, morning, afternoon. The big flow, not a big surprise, right? Basically coming from River Road, everybody's turning right to go to, not everybody, but most vehicles are going right to head toward Damascata in the reverse. So if you look here, 379 in the morning are turning right. 4:33 in the PM turning right, and then the reverse movement, 3:42 in the morning and 3:96 in the evening. That's the big number. That, I mean, traditionally in intersections, that's like the through, that should be like the through movement at an intersection, which creates this sort of complex sort of condition at this intersection. Now, there's a decent number of traffic going up towards, I'll say, the classic four-way intersection, 152 in the morning, 190 in the PM, that sort of, you know, form this part of the intersection. The numbers at this point are not big numbers. I mean, they're not numbers that are being like, whoa, how are we gonna manage those numbers? Now, these other numbers are pretty big. I mean, the 300, and you'll see as we start looking at options, you know, you know, it's gonna be important in terms of how we figure out what to do from a management perspective.
So just to understand the metric, this is a snapshot. You put up the cameras and sort of took data for how long?
So typically we would do it for 2 to 3 hours in the morning and 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon.
But they were there for 2 weeks or?
No. These cameras go up basically for 1 day.
Oh, 1 day.
One day. This was done on July 9th.
Okay, so this is that 1 day.
1 day, and it's a Tuesday. Keep that in mind. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that in a second. It's a Tuesday,
Okay,
July 9th. You know, we try to get in this time, you know, a couple things going on, right? You know, we do work, particularly on the coast where you have these sort of recreational seasonal conditions. We want to try to get data during the summer, right? We don't want to do data now. I mean, you know, it's going to be really low. This is a little bit different because we're missing school, right? That's another thing I'm sure it's on your mind, like, well, you missed the school. So we recognize that. My opinion on that is that it won't change the conclusions of where we're headed. right? So like the school traffic would go up, some of the other traffic at the intersection is gonna go down fundamentally, right? Because it's not peaking in terms of the other movements. So I think those offset each other. So I'm pretty confident, like where we've landed on this, these numbers are good in terms of, what we're doing, even though we didn't get the exact time period of the school. I would also argue that, we traditionally don't try to design around like some like that peak. To me, as a community, you should think about what makes sense for your intersection design and not worry about that one little peak, worry about sort of what goes on all day long and make sure that makes sense for all the sort of variables that go into intersection design. All right, so go to the next slide. So one of the things in my head, and was like, okay, so we did this count on a Tuesday. What about a Saturday? Like, because I do a lot of work throughout the state, and it's like, well, are Saturdays sometimes busier than the weekdays? And we only did the Tuesday count. So I wanted to look at some data, and that's what this table is. If you go into the report, it's volumes on Route 1 in Noblesville. DOT has a permanent count station at that location. And that's collecting data every minute of every day throughout the year. So I'm able to kind of look at that data. And basically, on that day, this is in July, and on that day, July 9th, I basically was able to look at data to understand weekly variation, Monday through Sunday. And ultimately, what I found was that actually Saturday was not as high as a weekday. It's kind of interesting to me. Like, okay, so maybe the Tuesday, I was worried that maybe Saturday would be like high and like, are we missing something there? My general conclusion is we're not missing anything there. I don't think, maybe there'll be certainly we don't design around the 4th of July. We don't design around sort of you have the pumpkin fest. We don't design around some of those things. So we sort of like, I feel like we're in a good place in terms of the July data and where we're at, and that it was collected on a Tuesday, and given that we don't have Saturday data. The other thing that we like to sort of understand as it relates to how well an intersection operates are pedestrian movements. And so we've got pedestrian data that was collected as part of that count in July. And this is the data, right? There's really only one crossing. It's across Mills Road, right? It's basically going up the hill towards the school. And you can see it's like 6 at 7 a.m. and it's all the highest is at 11:29, 32 at 1. And of course, I've heard it, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure when school lets out, it's a lot, right? So something that we just have to keep in mind as we think about the design of the intersection, that there is this peak of pedestrians that influence what goes on at the intersection when we start looking at the designs. And we can talk about it more when we look at the designs. How I don't think it's going to be an issue, because I think the designs sort of reflect making sure that that's a safe crossing, right? That Mills Road crossing, make sure it's like designed so it's safe for pedestrians to kind of get through. Next slide. So again, this node 1 River Road, we've looked at a couple concepts. One is just trying to clean it up a little bit, right? It's kind of confusing. I get confused. I've been through it a number of times, and that's like, where am I going in? How am I getting to the? So really, it's trying to clean up and Nate's gonna go through it with Jan in more detail, so I don't want to go through the details, but basically it's creating sort of a standard T intersection as sort of option alternative 1, and then the other alternative is like thinking about putting in a roundabout, right? And these guys will talk about it more, but this will have a traffic calming benefit in terms of slowing people down. It's got some design challenges, right, in terms of topography, but whatever. It's an intercostal, and these guys will talk about it more in detail in a minute. But as part of my study, I wanted to evaluate it, like how would those things perform? And so you can go to the next slide. So this is not a lot of data, but it's just the model. When we evaluate intersections, we evaluate how they perform from a delay perspective. How long basically do you wait at intersection? And the output is quantitative delay per vehicle, and then a qualitative measure, level service, which is like a school grade card. A being a great intersection or great movement, no problem. F obviously failing, problematic. So alt 1, these are existing, pretty much not a problem. Just so you know, we grew traffic by 10% to sort of reflect some sort of growth within the area. Sort of a best gas kind of thing. But we looked at the two alternatives. Remember, alternative one was this classic T intersection, and two was the alternative. What's the result? They're all both working really well. So from the point I want to make is sometimes one alternative will work better than the other. And that is part of your decision matrix in terms of how you decide which one you may prefer over another as a community. In this case, they both work great. So that shouldn't be a factor in sort of your decision making. You should think about sort of other things that make sense to you from a concept perspective. So next one.
Can you tell me the delay number, what that means?
That's seconds per vehicle. So in that hour, that's what that represents. Yeah. And so for the Academy Hill intersection, no two, we looked at three alternatives. First one is basically create a standard four-way intersection, right? Eliminate basically whatever you guys have a name for that thing. I don't know. What's up?
Malfunction junction.
Oh, that's funny. So I worked on a project in Manchester, Vermont. Malfunction Junction was the intersection of Manchester and Vermont. Anyway, so eliminating that part of it and creating a standard four-way intersection like you typically see in a community. This one, create the four-way, but allow only the movement towards Damascus, not the reverse movement, because that creates some of the complications.
When you say four-way, are we talking stop signs or street signs?
Stop signs.
Okay.
Stop signs. So it would be a four-way stop intersection. Each approach would stop. Is what that would be. This one would also be four-way, plus this would be a right yield control movement. Only that movement, right? Not the one that goes today. That one wouldn't be part of the mix, is what that one is. And then the third one is, can you get around about the work there? And, again, these guys will talk about it. It's tight there. You're not taking some property corners, there's stuff happening there. So it's a little, just look at it, it's a little funky looking. So that's still to be sort of flushed out a little bit, but anyway, I looked at it from a traffic operation perspective. So go to the next slide. So again, same kind of table, same sort of delay figures, right? Seconds per vehicle. Again, there were three of them, right? Remember the three. This is standard four-way with delay. This is with the free right. And then this is with the roundabout. Roundabout works dandy, right? All A's works great. The four-way is, if you remember, there are a lot of A's at River Road. There's a B. B's pretty darn good. I mean, DOT has a general standard of like level service D or better is considered to be acceptable. Just to have that in mind, right? So in this case, you do have a C for one of the movements that are 15 seconds delay. I find that's acceptable in terms of the realm of sort of looking at these things. So again, but it's performing a little bit less than certainly a roundabout. And all two is better because you're pulling out that right turn out of the equations, right? I mean, you remember that number of like 3 something that turns right? You're pulling it out of the intersection, so the intersection is going to perform better, and that's what's happening with number 2. So this one has a little bit of differences from a traffic flow perspective and what goes on. So again, think about that when you look at the alternatives. And again, of course, I'll provide comments and questions.
Just quickly, what is the name?
This here?
What's the non-applicable, like, what is the NA, what?
Oh, NA, that
Because-
movement doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist in that alternative. Yeah, because it's changed, things are changing. Yeah. I think, is that my last slide?
I think so.
Yeah, last slide. All right, I'll be around, I'm not late, so, yeah, okay.
Okay, now we'll get into the street alternatives that Nate will walk us through if you want to do that.
So we looked at Main Street and the downtown portion, shown here, and developed 2 different alternatives for that one. In this case, we've got parallel parking on street in the blue. We've got the travel lanes shown in the gray, and then 5-foot bike lanes in either direction in yellow there. And then the green shown are little basically bump outs to keep people from parking right on edge of the intersection, so you can actually pull in or out without cars being right there. In this case, we're looking at better pedestrian accommodations, so sidewalks on both sides, crosswalks. The on-street parking will not only be a benefit of added parking, but traffic calming measure, so usually. What you see is if there's parallel parking or any form of parking on either side of the street, people tend to want to slow down driving through there. And then the benefit is bike lanes, but as you can see, the right of way of the road narrows up here as you start to approach the bridge, so you can't continue the bike lanes all the way through here and have adequate travel lanes for driving. So that does come to an end here, and there'd be sharrows showing that bikes would have to share the lanes with cars. And then we're also showing decorative lighting for sort of more village feel. It's another visual cue that you're in a downtown area, you should slow down. And then in red is this passageway to be able to drive through here and access. There's various parking areas and things at the front of these buildings. So it's just a way to have better circulation through here than how it's currently kind of a big open parking area with no like delineated pathway to circulate through there. So that's just aimed at kind of reducing confusion mostly. Go to the next slide.
I have a question. Is there any consideration for street trees in this? I mean, you talked about decorative lighting.
Well, I
How about street
think
trees?
all these green areas are kind of landscaped areas, so they're, yeah, you could either have trees or other plants that we didn't get into the details of that, but yeah, there's certainly opportunity for that.
And the sidewalks are
There,
the
this,
opposite of the parking from the street, right?
correct, yeah, so parking separating pedestrians from the travelways. Just
Are you taking land by dominant name?
we are not showing that, the right of way is all the way kind of out here along the faces of these buildings, so no. Yeah.
And the sidewalks are how wide?
5 feet.
Should they be 8 to 9?
Yeah. So this is the second alternative for the same area. Same general elements to it, but there are no bike lanes in this case. The travel lanes have a 2-foot shoulder to them, so there's a little bit buffer between the travel way and the parking still, but it's not like a full 5-foot bike lane. And the reasoning for that was you can't continue the bike lane all the way through anyways, so maybe an acceptable option is to just share the roadway for the whole length. And in this case, the sidewalks are now 8 feet wide, so they're more pedestrian friendly. Just generally would seem a little bit.
What are they now, do you know?
They're probably between 4 and probably average around 4 feet would be. So, yeah, now 5 feet's more typical standard for ADA. And there's still this passageway, but we just showed how it could be an option that it maybe ends here. You still keep this access here, but there could be more green space or something in front of these. It's just an alternative. That could be applied to alternative 1 as well. But all the other elements of it are the same. This is the portion of Main Street coming off the highway and the River Road off to the left here. It's also showing parallel parking. No bike lanes on this alternative, and sidewalks on both sides. See the same kind of green bump outs there. And generally the idea with parking is again to kind of one, provide more parking, and 2, provide visual cue to slow down as you're approaching the downtown area. And we're showing decorative lighting through this area too. This is Mills Road, so a bit more residential type area. So we are not showing decorative lighting through here. We are showing sidewalks on both sides. So pedestrians could get through downtown safely. And then, no bike lanes, so there'd be sharrows on here. Indicating to share the cars and bikes should share the lane. And yeah, the roadway will be a bit narrowed here compared to how it is now, than just another traffic calming measure. Yeah.
All in all these scenarios, the travel lane width is 11 feet, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Do you know what it is on the various sections now?
It varies quite a bit. I mean, the Main Street portion coming off the highway, I think that was like, well, 14 in some spots.
14.
Yeah, it's pretty wide. I don't recall exactly on Mill Road. I want to say generally we're taking a couple feet out of all of these areas. But you do still have I think a 2-foot shoulder and everything separating you from the curb. So the intent's not to make it tight, but just not a highway. Yeah.
So how wide are the sidewalks?
5 feet in all cases, except for that one scenario downtown where I showed 8 foot.
So you get 5 feet on both sides of the road,
Yes, yeah.
and you still got an 11-foot.
Yeah, in this case, it's 11 foot of travel lane, then 2-foot shoulder pavement, and then 5-foot sidewalk. Same thing, both sides. John is up next to talk about intersections a bit more.
So Tom kind of introduced the intersections to you, the different options. So this is at Main Street and River Road. So the T intersection is the first one. And again, it's cleaning up that intersection. Right now, there's a lot of movements that it can be confusing to people that certainly don't use the intersection a whole lot. This here kind of takes it up to a T stop. You'd have a turn lane for left turners wanting to come in from Main Street. What it does do is it creates opportunities for more green space. So it minimizes how much pavement you've got out there. Right now, you've got a fair amount of pavement for different movements and different roadways. And it creates opportunities for additional green space. So that's one of the benefits of this particular one in creating an additional green space for landscaping and other things. And I know it's important to have in terms of the visual cue. So when you're coming down through here, as Nate had mentioned, but currently the lanes are quite wide. They're 14 feet wide. You've got wide shoulders on beyond that. And so it looks wide open, looks like you could go really fast. It doesn't look much different from the highway. So when you get in here now, you'll have narrower lanes and you'll have this parking on the side. So it's looking like a little bit more friction, and you've got to take a little bit more care and caution. So that's going to be your visual clue to start to slow down. There won't be any obstacles there to actually make you slow down, but just from a visual perspective. The second option is this roundabout. And again, as Tom had mentioned, there's some challenges here from a grading perspective. As you know, you're coming down a grade and that continues through that whole intersection area, as well as continuing down this way. So you have to kind of make not necessarily a level table, but something closer to level table or a larger area in here to create that roundabout, because you can't have those on really steep slopes. But nonetheless, when you create that, you'd have a ramp down onto River Road. All these movements would then come in. Most of you folks, I'm sure, are used to or somewhat familiar with roundabouts. You wait your turn to get in, and once you're in, you've got the right of way. So again, the movement from Route 1 and from downtown will be the predominant movements. And to make it through that intersection, they're going to have to divert, so slow down, divert, and come out. And so when they're coming out of here, they're already going slower. So from a traffic calming perspective, this is going to be very effective at really slowing people down. And then beyond this, they'll get into that, they'll have that same vernacular or similar vernacular with the parking on either side, decorative lighting. And some other landscape opportunities, which will be more visual cues. There will be some opportunity for some additional green space. But this intersection itself is it's a large area, so that's gonna be a relatively, larger space. In the center, then maybe an opportunity for a little bit of green space as well. Yes,
What would be 1 o'clock? Can you tell me what that is?
this here is a driveway.
Oh, to the Lincoln Home?
Yes.
Okay.
We're annexed, so
Okay,
that
thank
other
you.
building, yeah.
Now,
And
is
go
there considerably less parking with the?
this moves the
Roundabout?
parking down somewhat, but there will be, and again, I think we have, on one of these plans, we do show some additional parking. So there will be parking that will continue up and through here. I don't think if there's anything else to discuss with it. Oh, the only other one is that this particular intersection is a little bit close here. We're probably gonna modify that to come in, move that over a little bit further away from the intersection, just to create some space there.
The downward path toward the roundabout. What pitch would you see being the situation?
The approach path, we can still have about the current slope. And that is, let's see, about 4 feet, it's about 4% coming in, is what I'm guessing. And through the roundabout, I think we're gonna be trying to limit that to about 2% across that roundabout. We wouldn't wanna take it about, because it's about 100-foot diameter.
So yeah, does that imply retaining some?
Potentially, I mean, there's a decent amount of right of way here.
Yeah.
But there may, we don't want to introduce retaining walls if we can avoid, if we can avoid it some other way. Because, those they're expensive, but they're also become obstacles for traffic. So.
And one other question on the other option, what's the consideration for calming the traffic in that, or how?
Really what it is when you're coming off here, you got 14-foot lanes with the wide shoulders. So you got this really wide situation. And when you come into this intersection, beyond it, it narrows up. So you're looking at like a small hole. The hole gets a lot smaller. So that's really it's a visual cue more than anything. And that's really what will be the cue for slowing the traffic.
So combination of parked cars, streetlights, treescapes.
Activities and narrower lanes. Yeah.
There's that crosswalk that's located on the downtown side of the intersection. Could that be a raised crosswalk? I don't know. I mean, that's something that could be flushed out at a later time to help with calming traffic. We do that. We've done that in other places in the state. That's a busy road. But again, the intent is to get people to travel at the speed that's supposed to be traveling. You want to get them down to 25. So there could be some thoughts to do some, vertical devices, stretch.
I think, sorry, just quickly, I think the cars that would park there would be very infrequent, occasional right now.
Right, there's not a lot of need right out here at this point. We
People
understand.
coach out there right now when there's church and service on the Sunday, they can park out there, but. Especially during event times, they'll park along the side of the road, but yeah, I mean, in the future, hey, the objective would be to, have more activity and people park there and use it,
That's the long-term
Yeah,
goal.
but
I think Jan talked about like landscaping.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other way to sort of impact sort of motorist behavior, is sort of like tighten the view shed. And so there's some opportunity to show some greening going on. There may be more that can happen there to really change sort of that view going, coming down the hill, to this intersection.
Yeah, we can pull back some of those spaces. We just maxed out the spaces in this particular one. We can pull some of that back and emphasize green area.
I see a potential problem here. I drive that every day, multiple times. And if we're coming from River Road and you're coming up to a T, traffic is going a lot faster right off the highway there. That's going to make it challenging to make a right and to get into town. As it is now, you just keep going straight and it's a merge. So, you know, you don't necessarily stop when you're coming off of River Road and the traffic is slowed down enough, so it's kind of a gentle, you go, I go. This I can see, and then you have to make a left a little bit further up where people are going a little faster. I think that still keeps all the problems that we currently have, which is making a left when people are coming off the highway really quickly. That's always dangerous, even if it is teed
Well,
out.
we could potentially, I don't know how far up here, but we could do the rapid narrowing or tapering before that intersection too. That's another possibility. You know, just kind of taper it down so that people, you know, they get their cue earlier as you're coming into the intersection rather than at the intersection.
Would there be space? And I know there's not a lot of traffic taking a left on the upper, you know, to go south on one, but it looks like there'd be space to maybe have a left turn lane coming off of.
Yeah, there are left turns there. The volumes are very low at River Road, aren't they?
Oh, going off of River
No,
Road, going,
from River Road left.
yeah, very low, right?
Yeah, I just-
Everybody would have done it down.
You don't want to be
Everybody's going
behind,
down
is
River,
what you're
right,
saying.
Well, yeah, there are certain times of day when if somebody needed to take a left and. You know, it's like taking a left on Route 1.
Yeah.
It gets very difficult only at certain times
Well,
of
the
day.
other thing we could do is we could widen the approach here a little bit.
Well, that's what I'm
wider
saying,
shoulders
it's-
so that
yeah.
you could get by them if you
Yeah,
needed to.
that's what I was getting at.
Yes, yeah, I mean, there were 13 making that left in the PMC Garden. So not, you're on it, right?
no.
In a busy time period,
Yeah.
you're gonna get stuck behind it. What I would like, you know, you should think about, okay, we can add a lane. There's room there to add a lane, but again, it's taking away from green space, it's adding more pavement for something that is not showing up as being overly problematic. I get that there's times that you may have to wait, but overall, it's not like this serious congestion issue that you need to do to keep that up.
Are there massive budgetary differences between the
Yeah.
two?
Yeah. This is quite a bit more expensive, obviously, than that.
That's because of the grading, to level that out.
The grading and the amount of pavement, the amount of you have to do a lot of curbing to get, you know, people into that and there's a lot over there.
I'm not gonna speak for DOT, it's Steve, but typically, you know, we do sometimes this, a cost benefit analysis. Like why, say, you wanna spend this money to fix these problems? To be honest, there aren't crash problems at this intersection. So there isn't like a crash problem that you're trying to solve here. And operationally, it works okay. It's confusing. Typically, when you have confusing intersections, you have safety problems. So this one's not, because the volumes are relatively low, you haven't developed safety problems. So it's this interesting dynamic. Traffic calming is like screaming at this location. I don't think there's any question about it. Like, how do we deal with sort of the speed issue coming into town? But like, I can't speak for Steve, but like DOT would look at this, you want to spend how much and what are you fixing? And it's one of those things, it's a challenge. You know?
Yeah, I'll just say that the tendency has been for roundabouts to be reserved for locations with high accident counts and with fatalities. And for instance, that's why a roundabout is proposed next year for Belvedere Road and Route 1 in Damerscott. So that's a sort of cautionary note on how the traffic engineers at DOT will weigh these alternatives.
Yeah, to me, I would say it would be more the speed is the issue instead of the volume coming in. I mean, of course, volume is it too, but certainly slowing down to get into into town. I was gonna ask just real quick about the roundabout option, those red lines or those like curving coming out or like a median type.
Those are divided, kind of like a directional island. They're mountable, but they're kind of directing people so they know how to enter it. They're not gonna enter this one and try and go this way.
Gotcha.
Go this way. So that's kind of getting people separated and thinking that which way to think.
They're
Training.
British drivers, we want to make sure
Yeah,
that they
right.
understand where they're going.
What was it considered instead of doing that T intersection, the top one, to keep that going into town straight, you know, from River Road going straight into town and making that left right there instead of having. I don't know, I guess that's close to what we have, but as someone who travels it every day.
Yeah,
That doesn't look like I wanna do
Keeping
that.
that long, a right turn, so you can merge back into traffic. That merging movement requires, you know, a decent, good sized shoulder and good sized wide lanes. Because you're kind of looking over your shoulder and then getting into traffic. So I think that kind of defeats the purpose of trying to narrow up the roadway section to slow people down. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna, you know, conflict with myself here a little bit, but typically when you have those flat movements, those right turn movements, they typically develop crash patterns. Now, so you don't have crash patterns, so, but typically it's exactly what Jan says, you gotta look over your shoulder. So the pattern that happens is that you get rear-ended. Right, because you're looking over your shoulder, there's a car in front of you also looking over the shoulder, and you have to pay attention to when these rear-end crash patterns. So, you know, I mean, if my general take is if the state community are gonna invest money in fixing this, I'd be a tough sell to continue with that sort of flat angle movement. Your comments are valid. You're trying to make it easier to get onto Main Street from River Road. When you know, in dealing with that speed, I think what we need to think about, my opinion is we need to deal with the speed to make it easier for you to get out of the Main Street. I think that should be sort of the focus on trying to, you know, get at the issue that I think you're dealing with.
I also have the experience of that travel way too. I try to resist it, but sometimes you want to be in a competition with the person coming off the ramp. And be like, I can beat them. If I just speed up 5 miles an hour, I can beat them.
Because you're coming, they already have a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. You're coming from a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. So in theory, you know, I totally get it.
Yeah, no,
This is not something you guys actually do though, right?
Oh, no.
My other question is just about maintenance. When there's a lot of green space introduced on this, typically, how does that get maintained, you know, when you know, I would assume that would be grass.
It depends what you want to make it. I mean, if you make it, you know, with a lot of trees and other amenities, then it would be probably more expensive. Grass would be less expensive. I'm not sure how the town, if you maintain anything like that right now.
Well,
Parks downtown or other things.
Have a mowing contract.
I'm thinking of it from the annual budget cycle,
Yeah.
just like,
No,
okay,
that's
so
a good
maybe,
point.
you know, it's
You know,
not
you
a big
could-
number, but you know, there
You
would
could
be.
plant it as a meadow as well.
Yeah.
You could plant it with some, you know, grass, low maintenance or ground cover.
But it's in front of somebody's house.
This,
No, I thought you meant the bottom one, I'm sorry.
Well, all of those are in
Well,
the right away.
It's all
yeah,
commercial.
within the right of way,
Yeah.
so. Right now, it gets, I assume these folks small, almost
Yeah, they-
to the road.
Yeah.
And one more thing, was there a consideration to just leave the intersection as it is and just do traffic calming to get off of Route 1, maybe narrowing that or putting obstacles in their way or, I don't know, speed bumps?
Or fight mats.
We had not considered leaving the intersection untouched. I mean, it's certainly an option.
Could be an option, sure. Could be an option.
But just doing something to try to slow down Route
Yeah,
1.
doing your traffic calming, maybe narrowing the road and some intersection
I
stuff.
think the goals too, Stephanie, was to try to get parking along that route too.
Okay.
Try to address some parking needs within town. So, and that was the hope to get some city traffic on, but I agree, there's more that could be done further away from the intersection, further up that hill.
And I think if we turn that into a T intersection, traffic needs to be going a lot slower before they get to that T intersection. Otherwise, that left turn is just gonna be as dangerous as it always has been.
Yeah, it's not gonna change.
You won't be as likely to get rear-ended making that left-hand turn, but the traffic coming at you is gonna be going.
I would
too
agree.
fast.
It's gonna be, to be fair, that's gonna be a challenging objective,
Oh, sure.
right? Coming down that hill.
Yep.
You know, in terms of coming down that hill. And yeah, you can change the paint delineation and narrow lanes. But boy, you know, just the way that is, it's all, you know, we see it, I mean, I mean, it's not quite this, but, you know, going into Bath,
Yeah.
northbound, right?
Yeah.
DOT just spent not a lot of money, spent money putting in the flashing speed limit signs, I do work for the city of Bath, and so I just drove it, and everybody's still going 50, 55. It's just it's a tough.
So is the roundabout the way to?
Since roundabout, you're forced to slow down. I mean, that's the beauty of the roundabout. That's an expensive alternative, but boy, is that gonna have traffic calming benefit, because it just changes, ultimately what goes on. And so you're forced to slow down. So, and we're not, I mean, there isn't, makes, you're not gonna put in stop signs. That's gonna create problems by itself, but because that's sometimes people think about that. We'll just put up stop signs coming down that ramp and that'll slow them down. Probably not something that you're gonna want to do from a safety perspective. So no, the roundabout has that real plus, but it's a costly plus.
Now, you mentioned raised crosswalk there. What are the drawbacks from that?
With the raised crosswalk?
Yeah.
Noise sometimes, when you have raised vertical devices, noise becomes an issue as the vehicles go over it, particularly in residential, areas.
Could it be dangerous? I mean.
Sports cars.
So that, no, but I mean. I think that's potentially an option, deal with common, could you do something? At the other side, we've got it at the crosswalk, could you do something at the other side of the intersection?
Right.
We do raised intersections, right? I'm involved in designing raised intersections where the whole intersection is sort of raised and you're sort of ramping up to the intersection, right? Ramping up, then ramping back down again. Could it be raised? Maybe. I mean, again, it's gonna cost money, but that could be.
What is a raised crosswalk?
Excuse me?
What is a raised?
Raised crosswalk is simply the road ramps up to a flat platform where the crosswalk is.
Oh, I
Right,
thought
so
you were talking about
So
this.
downtown Brunswick, and those are poorly designed, so I don't want to use those as like the example, but downtown Brunswick has sort of raised crosswalks.
Is it Westbrook? No, not Westbrook. What's Gorham? One of the sort of greater Portland areas just had a recent sort of Main Street redesign, and there's some nicely done raised crosswalks there.
There are many locations that have them. They work. I mean, they work.
I just struggle with being the pedestrian who's trying to cross right there without
Yeah,
anybody slowing down before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the slowdown's coming up, I can see it, and there's a guy walking right across.
So they're gonna hit you like.
On my way, that'll slow everyone down. Getting run over might slow that person down.
So one extent.
Right, then tomorrow somebody else gets it.
Typically, what would the construction impact be time wise for those two options? I mean, would the one up top not, I mean, what's your estimate usually on a T intersection versus a, how long would it take to construct?
Yeah, I don't have any,
Or what's your past experience maybe and how long it takes for?
I mean, that could take, close to a year.
Yeah.
To get done.
Design.
No,
And construction?
construction. I mean, it's a long process.
That's what I would be curious
A lot
about.
of traffic movements, you gotta.
If it would affect us for a year, or getting into, how about the one on top? What would typically something like that?
That's much shorter. Obviously, you could do that in a particularly, maybe, 5 to 6 months at the most. Yeah, okay. I mean, there's a lot of, in this particular thing, there's a lot of traffic. You'd have to,
Management.
move traffic around and things like that. So you don't have a free site. You're just going.
The roundabout feels like it'd be a 2 construction seasonal project.
Yeah.
Just because of the grades and having to, get the ground done. So I think that's probably too soon. Probably.
Why don't we move on to the next slide, just to. We have to get to our question, because Emily had some questions, so I want to make sure we get to that point. So this is again, Main Street, Mills Road and Academy Hill Road. Our first option here was to create a four-way stop, not have this, eliminate the slip lane that's there now. So bring everybody to that intersection and turn. It's a bit constricted. One of the things we really want to do is, I think we want to lower this thing or change the alignment of this road, of Mills Road slightly, so that you can take a right turn a little bit better than you have now, because currently that movement is very, very tight. Kind of comes in at a little bit of an angle, and then you have to.
We've lost the crosswalk sign there twice. In the
Yes,
last 15
yeah, I
years.
know, and so, that tells you something right there, that it's too tight. So that's that particular one. Again, what you're picking up is you got a park here in the corner, or a green space here in the corner. You can kind of expand that into that other area, so you're picking up where that currently, where the lane is now, you can expand that green space, so. Whether or not that's something that's important to the community, that's one of the questions I think we wanna get some feedback on. The other option, yes,
With a four-way stop, what lengths, long body trucks could you handle on that?
we've tried to model it for WB 65, so the 55-foot blocks. On that, I mean, and again, it's gonna have to handle any kind of traffic that's going, taking that right turn, or taking this right turn here. This right turn here, I think we modeled a school bus to take that turn, but not necessarily a large truck.
That's hard because if you're coming from the north. In a big truck, that's the intersection that you're gonna get to. And so if Academy Hill's your destination. That's,
Yeah, it's a tough,
Yeah.
tough corner.
But I mean, it's not any worse. That's not worse. It's better than it
Than it
is
is
now.
now.
Right.
Not many trucks go that way.
That's why we lost two crosswalks.
yeah, no, I know.
This one here, and this shows it a little bit better, we've slid Mills Road. Towards, to the east a little bit to create a little bit better circulation and lined it up here. And this one has the four-way stop, but it does allow that, it has a slip lane for the right turn movement to Damascotta or to downtown. And as Tom had mentioned, this one functions a little bit better in terms of, it allows a lot of that traffic that would normally be backing up here, waiting for that intersection to clear through. So that one is, that one, it has a little bit less green space, you maybe pick up a little bit along the edge. And you have a little bit bigger island in the center.
How is that different from what we have?
Right now, this is wider. So your right turn, it's a right turn this way, and also a left turn is the priority number here. So you have a stop sign here, and you have a stop sign here. Essentially,
Anyone coming from Damascotta will have to go to the four-way intersection.
so if you want to come from Damascotta and go down Route 1 south, you have to come up to this intersection here and take a
Oh, I
left.
see. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, it simplifies movements quite a bit, actually, than what's there now. There are, I think, how many different conflict points? There are multiple conflict points at that location. So this basically, outside of the four-way intersection, just has one conflict point. Where today there are multiple ones. So it really cleans it up. And I think your comments so far have been spot on. It's about, how do you create, I mean, to me, like, looking at the numbers, the four-way intersection works. But how do you accommodate those heavy vehicle, large vehicle movements? That's what. To be fair, this is a concept plan, right? It's a concept plan, but you're gonna have to lay out, and they've laid it out. But it's good, that's the key part of it, make sure that things.
You get that as a design, you're really gonna.
Possible.
Yeah,
Yes, we
things
have to
could-
make it possible, but we don't have to design.
Go ahead.
As the conflict point, right now, I think about people coming off Route 1 that visually narrows, so it will hopefully slow people down. But how's the merge gonna happen with people coming through the stop sign
This
and
this
the
one here
lane?
has the priority now, so the south or the eastbound traffic on Main Street will have priority, so these
That would be.
folks here will have. to-
Yield signs?
Yeah, a couple of yield signs,
Okay.
exactly, gonna have to be, it'll be. a
Probably
different-
stop,
Yeah.
probably a stop
Yeah.
sign than a yield sign. I prefer people to actually stop than just free flow into,
Yeah.
I mean, a stop suggestion sign?
Well, a regulatory stop sign that if you go through, the police are gonna pull you over, an actual stop sign, yeah.
No, that would be good. Okay,
And then the third one here is the roundabout here. And again, this has similar challenges in terms of grade as there's probably 8 feet of grade differential between, the corners of it. So it's gonna have, it's a very difficult thing to fit in there. We created it just to see if we could do it. There are some, a little bit of difficulty in getting Mills Road into that. It's moved over further east, even further than this particular option. Try and get some separation between Mills Road and Academy Hill Road to get cars, so that cars can get in. And this person can see them get in, but those two roads are so close together, it makes it a difficult.
You just make them go all the way around it.
Well, yeah, but again, it's not the ideal layout for one, I don't think. It has its real challenges.
Yeah, on that one, it requires the purchasing or eminent domain of property.
It
to
does.
Accommodate that
It
one.
would, yeah. To move Mills Road further, you really need to take some land in that corner.
So with the four-way stop, like just today I was walking downtown and granted, it's just a little bit of time, but the school got out and the traffic was backed up way up Academy Hill. No big deal. It always is at home day, but it also is backed up to River Road because of the kids, people letting them in, and it's creeping through Damascotta for whatever reason.
So
That's
back
not
up on
unusual.
Main Street.
It's not unusual. I mean, I'm just.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen every day, but that, I think we all see that every week.
I mean, you, you guys did the test, right? You know, it's noted in the comp plan, right? You did the test. Was the test done when school was in session? You know what I mean?
Tour, you did, the one you did.
No, it was on a Saturday.
It was on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. You know what I'm thinking about.
They were both on Saturday.
Because the test worked, in my understanding, right? Other than you had to open it up for truck movements, was what I recall when I read about it. So again, to me, seems like it would work based upon, the field, test. So
So
making sure that, heavy vehicles can kind of get through is a key component of it.
the April test mimics the first option, top left.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
second June test mimics the second option.
The second
split lane.
Can you explain these briefly? What these tests were?
Oh, it was what do we call it?
Comprehensive plan, right?
Yeah, it was
Tactical
Urban
awareness.
guerrilla war, yeah.
Yeah,
Guerrilla
so,
warfare.
That's what I was afraid to say about it.
it was I think a 3-hour period of time on a Saturday morning up until 9 to noon. And we put out cones. Sheriff was notified. It was not just,
Yeah.
it was not just a hack, but
It was approved, yeah.
it's sort of, and it was,
My team had it.
it was just, to see what happens if we did a 4-way intersection there. So, that's all.
You emulated.
And
it.
then the other one, what the group realized in the first test was that the trucks couldn't navigate the intersection as it was. So you ended up having to move cones and let them do the slip lane anyway. So the second test said, well, hey, this just make that.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you, sorry. I was out. Well aware of that.
Yeah. Or was there an overwhelming feeling of one being better than the other? The trucks aside, because there's.
You would
plenty of
accommodate the trucks, right? And
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the trucks work better with the slip lane.
Well-
Going north, going, into Main Street.
Well, I think in Tom's analysis too, this particular intersection performed better than that one because of the slip lane allowed.
Well, it seems like if you peel off the majority of one of those 4 ways, then the other 3 are gonna move a lot easier.
Well, also, this is a very heavy movement.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, that's,
So
you
you don't
know,
have
the
to
majority,
people up here.
yeah. So then that left turn to go south on 1, there's a lot more chance for it, I guess.
Right, well, you don't have to wait for somebody to come through.
Yeah.
that intersection. Yeah, great opportunity.
So one of the things that, that channelized right, is counter to trying to calm traffic too.
Exactly.
I mean, one of the beauties of.
it sounds like our objective in this discussion is to
You're
help
forced
things
to.
get, yeah.
When you think about it, you start at River, you've got on-street parking, you've changed the context, and then you come to a 4-way. It just changes the whole sort of, I think, how things will flow. The right sort of you know, sort of introduces, you know, a little component of free flow. Get to Damascus as fast as you want to go.
Right.
So,
I
but
agree.
you know, if you stop them, you know, there's some, you know, building slow.
John, you also mentioned some of the design on this would improve that four-way intersection to accommodate those larger vehicles.
Yeah, the four-way, you'd have to,
Set that back and.
Yeah,
make it
yeah,
larger.
the other thing too is we can look at widening just the area leading up to the intersection from Route 1. So the trucks can get on, you know, cheat to the left side, so they can swing, you know, and same thing with the receiving lane on Main Street heading eastbound. Make those lanes a little bit wider at the intersection and then narrow them back up again. And that's just to accommodate those larger vehicle movements.
So this design does try to accommodate that versus what you currently see as what would be the four-way now.
Right, yeah.
Tom, did you look at what queuing was like with the four-way stop coming up Main Street if you come up River Road or down the ramp? Because I mean, I use this area a lot, and it just seems like there could be times commuting at the end of the day, some weekend summer traffic where you could have some pretty considerable queues on that section of Main Street and back toward River Road.
And Steve, talking about the four-way, you're talking about
Yeah.
Academy Hill, basically?
Yeah.
I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah, because it's already queued up the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, in the summer, on
Yeah.
Friday evenings particularly.
And
It's
in
all
the
the
summer.
way to the.
It's all the way
Route
up, you know, it goes up there.
So the biggest queue. This is if it's all four-way. Would be. Coming from Damascata.
Huh.
Is what I'm. Showing, and it would be about. 12 car, this is like, not to get into some engine nerdish stuff, but this is like 90% on queue. This is only exceeded 5% of time, so it's a pretty like busy day. It would be, you know, roughly, you know, 13 cars backed up. You know, there.
Yeah,
That's like
what
the
your
worst-
analysis
that's
may
like-
not take into consideration, once you hit Damascata, cars get back up because of something in downtown Damascata. And that.
Yeah, the other approach would be like, I'm showing about 10, you know, roughly.
I do think it would be really helpful to get those numbers for a Friday afternoon. People coming from, you know, into Damascata on a Friday afternoon in the summertime, because that's backed up well past the
Yeah.
church and all that. And also at school time, I mean. It can take you a long time to get from the school in Academy Hill down in the morning and in the afternoon, so. Those are really choke points that aren't taken into consideration.
And so, you know, typically we will look at what we call like the design hour, like what is the time period that you want to design your intersections around, right? And it's not, in theory, not to get into engineering theory, but it typically it's like called the 30th highest hour. We're not ever designing for the highest hour, the 10th highest hour, because it just becomes economically, you just become spending so much money and trying to solve a problem that only exists 1 hour of the year. Like, what do you, so there's some recognition that there are gonna be crazy time periods that we just don't design around. And so I'm not saying, you know, maybe it's like, we want to design around that Friday. That's important to the, you know, community. But we'd have to step back and think about that, because I don't have Friday data, so I can't do it right now. But, you know, if there's some sense like, Tom, you missed it, boy, Tuesday, what the hell's the matter with you? You need to be looking at a Friday. You know, my sense, you know, what we're looking at is typically what we look at in the state. In seasonal communities that, you know, like here. And so we just don't try to like design around those peak crazy hours that happen.
I know.
Another consideration of those peak crazy hours is how much traffic Main Street Damascata can absorb. Because that's what we're actually running
Think about it,
into
we really are.
when school lets out on Friday afternoon. It's not it feels like getting through that intersection is the issue. The issue is actually that traffic is backed up all the way from Bristol Road.
Right.
You know, so there's nothing that we can do with that intersection to fix that.
The crosswalk.
And I can just tell you, I do a lot of work with communities and understanding their school time period mobility issues, and it's very rare that we are trying to design around a school time period, because it's generally a very confined time period and it's happening. It's a crunch. And every town's got it almost, and it's just like, we're not like trying to figure out how to like solve that problem. You know, I mean, solve it via transportation demand management strategies, meaning like get the kids on the bus, no parent pickup, whatever it is, managing other ways to sort of deal with the demand side of things than the capacity side of things. And so, you know, I would just keep that in mind. I wouldn't be trying to design around that school time period. Just because it's relatively short time period, you know, in the scheme of things, you know, in terms of when you try, and if you do, you know, with these big intersections, you're talking about calming traffic, we end up with these big intersections that really do well during that school time period, then what's happening else at the other times? Wide open, people can go fast, not very pedestrian safe, and so you end up with this sort of imbalance of what you're trying to really do, you know, for the system.
Just one curious question, cost benefit analysis aside, the rotary probably performs best.
Yes, so the road, yeah, I think so. It'll be safer.
It's more
It's safer,
flow, it's
yes,
safer.
yes.
Sadly, it's expensive and crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're doing these like crazy in Massachusetts, yeah, all over.
Well, the department's a big advocate of roundabouts. You know, I mean, you know, where they make sense, they're all in. I mean, they're in.
So
Like Belvedere Road.
roundabout vehicle friendly, not so much pedestrian friendly.
No, very pedestrian,
Yeah,
right, because you have to slow down. And someone had the comment about those little islands in the middle, like to separate traffic going in and out of the roundabout. Those are typically raised, those are refuge islands, so pedestrian only has to cross one direction of traffic, wait, and then cross again. So they're actually very safe for pedestrians, very safe.
It's the pedestrian and cars.
They can be a little uncomfortable for, I'll say inexperienced bicyclists, you know, going through, because typically you're sharing the lane, you know, I do a lot of biking. I got no problem getting in a lane and going through a roundabout because everybody's going slow, just get in traffic and do it. You know, but as an experienced bicyclist, it's not a big deal, but if you're inexperienced, it gets a little, you know, uncomfortable.
That roundabout looks really confusing to me.
Yeah, the proximity of these two really, those two roads, Academy Hill and Mills, make it very challenging how to get in there safely, and there's not much separation, so you're gonna have people wanting to go up Academy Hill and coming in that are gonna be very close to each other.
And I just, the one opportunity that the first option provides, which shouldn't be discounted, is the green space where Veterans Park is.
Yes.
In terms of creating a downtown village atmosphere, that creates a whole new village center. Which would be wonderful during event times of the year, just as a needed green space in the village areas.
It's an opportunity, it really is.
Yeah, I was thinking in the interest of speed on option one. Did you ever consider having like a right turn lane there? Like it's still a T stop, but a right turn lane, you know what I'm saying?
Well, if you have
Instead of the merge.
this one here,
Yes,
yeah, if you really want to have only one vehicle up at the line at a time.
okay.
Because if you allow that right turn, it just causes confusion, you know, for the other folks using it, so.
Okay.
Really, for a four-way stop, you want one vehicle at a time, yes.
Got it.
I'm very concerned with pedestrian traffic on a roundabout, and I don't question you, except that I'm visualizing myself. And I'm visualizing myself crossing Mills Road. And I can see the traffic coming down Mills Road and everything looks fine. And I step onto the road and somebody goes around the roundabout and decides to go up Mills Road. And they don't look for me and I'm not looking for them. And like I said, I don't doubt your experience, but I'm trying to figure this out.
So this is a very unusual configured roundabout. Can we go to the other one? Because I think it's simpler to explain. Can we go to the? Yeah, this one, this is typically you see. So if I was on this corner and I wanted to cross to that corner, I only need to look in the direction towards Academy Hill. There's no other conflict, nothing, zero. And then you can, this, I mean, this is a concept that is raised. You can then get to that spot and be protected on a raised island. And then when you cross here, all you need to do is look in that direction, one direction. So it's a very simplified sort of way to cross an intersection. And you have to go slow around this. The way it's designed, you have to go slow. So it isn't like someone's gonna be going 50 miles an hour to go through here. So you have only one direction to worry about and speeds are slow. So they tend to be, where they get a little bit more complicated, if they're 2-lane roundabouts. Then it gets a little bit more complicated for pedestrian movements because you end up with these multiple lanes that you have to deal with.
So it's one lane, so you're only looking for.
One direction, that's it, one direction.
They are very.
Why don't we move on to the questions?
Okay.
So we
Like
can-
we waited, we didn't
Yeah,
take much time.
yeah.
We didn't do a very good job.
Hey, Nate,
Okay,
want to advance the slides to the questions? Thanks. Okay, we have one more village feel, and I think, I apologize, we just, wanted to talk about other components, and one of it is the green space and lighting and so forth, but I think we've kind of covered those topics as well. So when we go to the next.
Briefly on the village, to Main Street from node 2 to the bridge. As you know, the right of way is very, very wide there.
It is.
These designs aren't using much of it. In earlier iterations, there were considerations for angle parking.
Right.
Other ways of using that public space.
Right, one of the things we had heard in the prior public meeting was that some of that space. Well, first of all, there's gonna be some driveway access to behind the buildings through that space, which is fine. I guess if we could, why don't we cycle back to the Main Street? I don't think we have them both up here, but for instance, this one here, we do continue with the with that vehicular access through there. We were heard strongly that was an important component. This particular building here had no other parking and wanted to have maintain their.
That's all public space.
It is all public space. But if that's something this group feels very strongly about, wanting to utilize that public space in more of a, a green area or other types of communal space rather than dedicated parking to a particular building or whatever, that's fine. We'll take that input as well.
How about the question of angle parking? Was that?
Angled parking on the road?
Yeah.
The only the challenge with that is that there's a particularly large grade difference here. So there's gonna have to be some sort of separation, and trying to make angle parking would push, you'd have to cut into that slope, and then you'd have a fairly high differential between that space that's between the parking then and then the buildings.
On the other side, I mean,
The
there
other
is a
side
grade issue, but
That's, you don't have the grade issue on that side, that's correct. It does take up a lot more space, and then when you have angled parking, oftentimes what you're seeing is you want to have space behind that space, behind the actual parking space, because when you're backing out of an angled space, you want to be able to get back far enough so you can see the traffic that's coming. So it really starts to chew up a lot of the real estate there on the roadway.
Yeah, I was gonna comment, I've read various traffic studies in the past, that most towns got rid of angled parking because it greatly increased accident rates from back and out. But now some cities are doing reverse angled parking. Yeah, and
Portland tries that
well,
actually.
yeah.
Portland had an example of reverse. So essentially what you do is you drive by the space and back into it at an angle. So when you pull out your driver's side, you're just looking over your left shoulder to see what's coming. But that's.
But then you have to be driving in a certain direction.
Right, it's one direction. You can't.
Well, you are supposed to be doing that
same
on the side of the road.
Yeah.
that's the direction we're going. One of the issues that I kind of have with the way that area is now, and I don't live there, you do, so tell me if I'm wrong, but having that travel lane between the sidewalk and the storefronts makes those storefronts less inviting. I couldn't tell you what are in those storefronts because I never divert to go and walk in front of them, and I was just, it's an interesting sort of
Chicken and eggs there.
well, it's like an electric fence. It's easy to get over, but there's that mental block, you know, and so to have, in my mind, designing it somehow where the sidewalk actually brings you closer to the storefronts seems like it would maybe benefit the storefronts. And I don't know how that works in this design, but is it possible to have your parking and then your green space and then your sidewalk?
It's possible. The only challenge is when you park here and you don't have access to a sidewalk.
Sure.
Adjacent to that,
Yeah.
that becomes challenging.
Yeah,
And part of that is the standard, and that's not a storefront.
well, but it's a residence and is it, and I don't, like I said, I don't
In this
live
particular
there.
case, the
So-
standard is right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we live
So-
there and it doesn't, and I don't wanna speak for everybody, but it doesn't add any functionality for us having that road.
Having the drive.
It's more confusing, you know,
Yeah.
we moved in and, oh, there's a road
You
here.
have to
that's-
shovel it.
It's not really the road and we're not sure who shovels it. and
Yeah,
So I don't think, you know, the standard is gonna say, no, we really want.
So
things
having a
to
sidewalk
stay."
there wouldn't
Yeah, it
make
would
it
be,
less user friendly.
it would be wonderful to have the green
The green
space,
space.
right?
Yeah.
But we
That's-
wanna make
that's-
sure that
that's kinda
somebody
what we were
takes care
getting
of the
at,
green
this
space,
particular-
right? I mean, that's a really big,
that's important.
Yeah.
And the parking for the Stetson house, which is next door,
I mean, we don't have to speak for the Stetson House, but it
We
would be
don't.
nice for them, but I think that
Which- is
maintains
that
it.
this one or
they're to the
this one?
left.
No, they're the one
They're
up
to the
there.
left
I think you've
of
got
our-
that still.
They have
They
parking.
have a
Yeah.
couple of spots there,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's important, I think, to keep that for them, and there's
Even though
quite a
that-
few residents there.
Right.
But that's
But,
public, that's not
It is-
private.
No, I know, we're not
Space.
speaking for that.
Correct.
We're just
We're not.
saying that, you know,
And that's kind of what we heard, Brian, and then we also kept three or four spaces here, adjacent to that last building, because
I
they,
mean, this doesn't really
For the
change.
businesses.
So we have
Right.
parking, there is parking along that little road, but that parking now has been moved to the street. The sidewalk definition would be much better, because right now that people just
Yeah.
don't, they just kind of want, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm like,
there's
I'm on
like,
a
there's
street,
a
I'm not really on
telephone
a
pole
sidewalk.
right in
There is a
Right.
sidewalk there,
Right.
it's just,
I don't know if I'm supposed to be
it is
here.
not user
Right.
friendly.
So, and the other, so it'd be wonderful to have this, and then we still have the access to our back, which is your.
yeah.
Yeah.
that's-
Need that.
And then I think we would just need to work with the, you know, whoever to make sure that we all take care of that green space.
Well, and this green, that could be, you know, I'm sure it's just as replacing that roadway.
It'd be wonderful to have some
It
trees.
could be right up
really.
against the building
Yes.
as well. I mean, it could be a much bigger green space. So, I mean, there's opportunities there. So we tried to be responsive to, you know, again,
Yeah.
certain comments.
And I agree, there's nothing really to fight for with that.
The only other problem I see with this plan is that Kevin's not gonna be able to get out of his parking spot in the
I
town
know,
office.
yeah. I was
That,
thinking that too.
that left uppermost, there's
Those are
parking
parking
right
spaces,
there.
yeah.
Well, he didn't provide comments.
I gave.
Yeah, I think we should probably lose.
Straighten it out.
Spaces.
So, okay,
Well,
why don't we get to the,
One other thing I want to mention is the idea of whether utilities could be undergrounded as part of a landscape plan for Main Street.
that's a fairly expensive venture, and you know, have to engage all these buildings, because I'm sure a lot of their power comes in overhead to those buildings, so they'd have to rework what they're doing. It's a great question.
I can't speak for DOT, but I'll just say that I doubt DOT would pay for any undergrounding of power. That's just not something they do as part of projects, so funding would most likely be borne by the community. As John said, it is super expensive. I mean, this comes up, I mean, every project we work on, it's like something that makes sense. But it's so expensive. It's happened only a few times and I think. You know, Falmouth did it, number one. That's not, there've been some communities that did it, and it's, you know, Falmouth was 7 million to put it on the ground, you know, back a long time ago, now, and so it's a lot of money.
The when they did Main Street in Demerara, I think it's 15 years ago. They had the option to put the power underground, and it wasn't the cost as much as it was the disruption and the time extension to the construction. And the shop owners were pained enough that they would, you know, have to deal with about 6 to 9 months worth of construction and disruption. And then to add another 6 months for, you know, underground utilities, that was really, they saw the deficit in their annual income levels. So that was really, not that we have a lot of storefronts here, but you know, that's kind of what killed it in Nemerscott, the way I remember
They
it.
also didn't want to pay for the entrances.
And the entrances, they had to pay for the.
Nobody wanted to pay for
That's
that.
right, yeah.
Why don't we get to the questions again? If you can take some notes, just so make sure. All right, great. So these are the questions that Emily posed, which the options for the Route 1 off-ramp River Road intersections are the most viable in the community's opinion, and why, and what questions or concerns remain with this intersection. Now, we've gotten some feedback from you already on that. So I don't know if there's any other opinions about, this is the Route 1 River Road. So this is the T intersection or the roundabout. Those are the two.
So would we all like the roundabout if we could afford it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think if we have the T intersection, then we need to do some physical thing to slow traffic down, like a raised intersection or a speed bump before the T.
Okay. That's good.
I mean, it would be nice to.
Well, that's
kind
part
of
of the-
ballpark
yeah.
cost on some of these things too. It's like hard to make a decision
Yeah.
without knowing the financial impact.
And I can't
I know.
take that into forward. Which of the options for the Academy Hills Mill Road Route 1B intersection most viable? And the community's opinion, and why, and what are the questions and concerns? Again, we've covered some of that, but any other thoughts on those intersections? The four-way stop versus the four-way with the slip lane or the roundabout? Yes.
I vote for the slipway.
Me too.
I feel the same way.
I feel.
As
With
long
a stop
as long as it has a
The
stop sign.
stop sign. yeah.
And maybe the parking spot closest to it is reserved for the sheriff.
Wait. There we go.
Enforce that stop sign.
I vote for the four-way stop. Because I think it's consistent with our long-term plan of a village. And I think that our concerns about pushing traffic, I think it was a great point. We've got a ton of pedestrians in Damascus crossing the street that traffic is gonna hit up against. So all we're doing is pushing that, and then whoop, now they gotta stop at the bridge. So why not slow them down through our village and then have our own pedestrian traffic in the future? So I vote for number 1.
I do too. I think they're actually, you gotta, if you look at them both as a companion to one another. If you have the roundabout and you greatly slow down the traffic flow, it makes the four-way intersection more viable because of the slow pattern.
I like the
Streaming
combination of
traffic
it.
come to it.
Green space.
Slow it down.
Then 4-way.
Yep,
Yeah.
I like that combination.
And more green
Yes.
space.
From a
too.
very personal note, when I get to four-way stop and there's a lot of traffic, you have to say, oh, who's gonna go first? What's gonna happen?
You're already worrying about how to cross the road when you. You're gonna- I know, you're right.
I
they are
don't think a
confusing.
four-way stop is a
You're right,
simple
Scott.
thing. I know there are rules, but it's confusing.
But don't we have a 3-way stop in option 2? We just have a
No,
faster.
that was a two-way stop.
That's, and option 2 is a four-way stop at the intersection, but your right turners don't have to go
So
through
it
that.
is still a 4-way stop. You still have those issues. You just have right turners going faster.
Right turners go, but they have to stop before they.
No, and you have,
If-
so you
if
have
that-
fewer.
If it were a four-way intersection, would a stoplight work in that instance?
Stoplight being a traffic signal?
Yeah, a traffic signal.
So So there are specific warrants that you need to meet before a signal is considered. I haven't looked at those warrants. My sense is that you wouldn't meet those warrants by the fact
What does
that
that mean?
four-way stop analysis works.
What is
But I
a
can
warrant?
look at that. I can look at that. And one of the things that makes this intersection confusing now is that it is a three-way stop, right?
Right.
There are other communities with three-way stops and they add a lot of signage, other approaches don't stop and they try to get at that issue through signage, but it still is just confusing. And so, we prefer to have four-way if you can do it. In this case, they don't do it because they would start backing up and implicate the free-flowing movements, that's why it's done. I don't, I can look at a signal.
I was just curious, to address that very real, people not knowing what to do at a four-way intersection. If you've got a light telling you it's your turn, then it's your turn.
Yeah. Well, and it provides clear messaging for pedestrians right through.
Yeah.
And push buttons, all that stuff, and so. I'll look at it. I can look at that.
Thank you.
Advise, see whether it responds or not.
Would that generally be a higher volume issue? If we did a four-way stop and 30 years from now, volumes are up, would that trigger?
Yeah, typically the warrants are either volume based or crash based.
Okay.
So it's one of the two.
I feel like if Bristol Road
I know, right?
warrants a stoplight,
Right.
there's got to be as much traffic going through that intersection.
There's some visibility at Bristol Road.
Well,
Okay.
or was it driven by safety crash pattern?
Sure.
That's.
Yeah, there's some visibility issues there.
Yeah.
Up over the hill.
I'm trying to think of a clean four-way stop in this region that would be kind of equal traffic flow, very clean four-way stop.
Like as an example.
Yeah, in a village
I
atmosphere.
can see if I can find something. I mean, I do enough work. I'll
I
see if
mean,
I can find something.
I'm thinking of downtown Booth Bay Harbor might be one next to the library. It's a very slow pattern. It's very easy to navigate that.
Yeah, I've worked on a number, I think of Center Street and Bath, but that's a three-way, because
Yeah.
the hill going up Center Street. And there. But I mean, it's good, that's a good part, good thought. I'll see if I can give some examples of where similar volume intersection four-ways are, so you can at least have that as a tool to think.
So in the, we see you're bouncing between, the slipway and non-slipway. In this four-way, no slipway, Mills Road is not realigned. But in the slipway
Right.
version, Mills Road
Yes.
is realigned. That
And I
actually,
think
does
our
that get it?
preference, and we didn't realign it, and this one here, it is realigned somewhat further east.
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah.
taking land from that corner lot.
It is.
Uh-huh.
It
And
is.
that's it's not just the roundabout that takes land from that lot, it's this.
This
if
one
you
does
real-
too.
so what-
And I think the other one would as well, because I think our preference really would be to move that down.
And that's all about the right turn up.
About this right
Yeah.
turn here, yeah. And it also, if you align it with this, then you create a little bit more space in front of, the public house there.
So does it work without that realignment, or is that really problematic?
If we flip to them.
I mean, obviously the turn is hard, but
Okay. This is the full, right?
Yeah.
But that corner becomes very difficult, right? I think we've shown it cut back into that corner in that hill right now, the way it's done.
so
there's-
cut more than it
into
is
this,
now.
yeah, more than it is now.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I don't know, I mean, I know there's grade issues there.
Mhm.
There's could be other challenges, but
But again, it's not much different than the issue that we have right now, which is a very tight.
Yeah, it's a very tight-
Not that that's a great example of. A successful right turn, but it's not worse. If you go back to the other slip lane one, sorry you can. I can see
that.
I can see the translation where the cars are, the lanes and where there's some cars that queue there. I mean, you're moving that over the curb about, 15 15 feet or so, more, right? Yeah,
This way?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite a bit.
And you can see where the dashed property
And
lines are.
that's the right away there, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, so there's eminent domain in that, yeah,
So it's-
which,
or you say eminent domain, but it's, I don't know. if that's-
no, I'm sorry, whatever,
You
what would you call
have
it?
to a taking.
A taking, yeah, yeah.
And I would just say these are concept ones.
Yeah.
As you get, you know, as you start.
And
getting
that
into
extends
the-
back, it extends back more than just that one, because you have to get that alignment to work, so. And then over here, we would add a stop, so.
I'm still thinking that the slipway would be better for traffic flow. You did say it was better rated. And I want to come back to this point of on Friday, I've seen the Friday night traffic in the summer back up all the way, onto the ramp coming off of Route 1. And if we slow this down too much more, it could actually back up onto Route 1. And that's what I would.
Yeah, that would be a non-starter. I can tell you that.
Well, I have.
It's something you want to just
And
kind
that-
of find.
So let me just dig at this a little bit more. What's causing, this is the backup going from northbound Route 1 down Main Street, turning right to go to Damascata.
Right.
What's causing the backup?
Damascata.
Damascata?
Well,
But
it's,
Damascata, but.
Is it Damascata that's causing?
it's,
the
well,
problem?
it's,
Yes.
it's all the traffic that's going down the Bristol Peninsula
Yeah.
is coming through there.
Right.
All the
Right.
traffic going to Damascata is going through, so it's Bristol Road, the light at Bristol Road, it's.
So it's has nothing to do with this intersection.
But-
Yeah.
You didn't nothing to do with this intersection.
But
It's still gonna
yes,
be backed up.
yes, it does, because
does?
if you have a four-way stop, that can slow down. You're putting all the traffic into this four-way stop instead of having some go off, peel off. You're backing,
True, but again, my models show that it will work. I'm just,
Right.
my
Wait.
models say it work. Now I'm saying I'm not necessarily modeling that Friday, peak time, summertime, when everybody's rushing to go down a peninsula and do what they need to go where their summer place, whatever. So, but it's interesting because I'm like, I still find this hard to believe that this would fall apart.
But I-
Remember I had like C, right? Remember I had C, level service C, so it's still capacity. It's because of Damascata.
right,
Even, I don't think this still would be the bottleneck. I don't think this will be the bottleneck. I think it's
well,
still
you
gonna
might
be.
wanna crunch the numbers, so I would hate to be right.
Well, it would be, I mean, I wish, we're limited by cost to collect a lot of data, right? I mean, as an engineer, I'd love to have lots of data, right? So
Well,
to be able to respond,
Well,
like,
and
right?
this,
You know,
Tom, if you did have that condition where your traffic's backed up from Damascata, your last car in the queue is gonna be right here, right? Going down,
Yeah.
it'll be right up against the intersection. So are your left turners then gonna be able to go because the right people wanting to go down Main Street towards Damascata can't go through the intersection because there's a backup.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're basically able to stack with this slip lane, able to stack a few extra.
A few
cars.
extra cars, right? A few extra cars, correct.
I think you also have to consider.
It's funny, I was trying to think of like, could you do this project in phases? Do the four-way, but reserve the possibility of the slip lane if your Fridays become unbearable, right? And you've identified, and then put the slip lane in. I'm trying to think, and as I was thinking about this just now, I'm like, the problem is when you design the four-way, you're gonna design that right turn corner to allow trucks to happen. So it's gonna be somewhat big. If you're gonna go with the slip lane, then you have this big right turn that you don't need. So I don't, that big radius that you don't need. So I don't, but I was like, well, maybe there's a way to get at both somehow. I don't know, and think about it, sort of, in a phased way. Do the four-way, don't landscape yet, don't get that area, quite done yet, and then see what happens, and then throw that slip lane in if you need it. I don't know,
I guess.
Pavement green, just.
My question, and maybe while you're thinking about this, I know you have thought about it, but my question would be, peak time on a Friday afternoon, say from 2 to 6 p.m., 4 hours in the summertime. What's the burden from the other two directions at that intersection?
Sure.
Because the cars that are gonna be in queue to make a right-hand turn to go down Main Street, they're not based necessarily with the same amount of traffic flow coming at them. So they're gonna get there and there's gonna be two empty
Yeah.
sort of opposing lanes and they're just gonna say, oh, we can just go. And so even though it's a stop line, a stop sign, there would be a California stop and people would just be.
Just go quickly, they're
keep on
going pretty
going.
quickly. Sure.
Yeah, 3 cars at a time.
Sure, sure, yeah, you know, and so, no, I mean, which is why, you know, I wanted to understand. You know, Saturday one, remember, I wanted to like look at that, but it's not here, it's on Route 1 in Noblesboro, I don't have it here. Just get at that a little bit. So, you know, I mean, it's something I think we just gotta think about.
Say, mix on the bike lanes that go to nowhere.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was kind of
I
some
really wish we
feedback.
had we could have bike lanes, but they just go that little lane of Main
Yeah,
Street.
there's nothing in Damascotta that I continue on.
Yeah.
I mean, if we needed them anywhere, it would be from River Road to Academy Hill, which is that bike corridor, but I
Right.
think that's.
If the money is, if there's any money federally, are you predisposed to have bike lanes or is there's any grant money that was predisposed?
Necessarily.
But also, if we've slowed traffic down enough, biking with traffic is less dangerous. You know, 25-mile-an-hour traffic, you can keep up with that on a bike. 40-mile-an-hour traffic,
Yeah, I think it comes down to having continuity in a bike system, and you just don't have that.
Yeah.
Damascotta is never gonna have, I say never, I don't think they'll ever have bike lanes, right? They're not removing parking in downtown to get a bike lane, so you're gonna have a shared accommodation in downtown Damascotta. And so to just have this brief segment of bike lanes seemed, I'm a biker, I do a lot of bike design, I do bike planning. It didn't seem to make sense to me. It seemed like you could allocate that space to better use for like high level pedestrian and streetscape elements than putting this one gap of a system in place. Other thing, keep in mind, and it's legit, you know, we like bike lanes, but it also creates a wider roadway, right? More pavement. So it actually ends, could encourage, higher speeds to some degree, right? And so, certainly if there are a lot of people biking, that sort of minimizes that. But if it's like it's an extra 10 feet wide, 5 feet on each side, so it ends up being wide. So here, in my opinion, I don't think it makes sense here. Anyway.
I was gonna say, certainly congestion is a big issue, but on those hours when congestion isn't an issue, speed is the issue. And if slipway is the one that you're thinking about, at the very least, a stop sign like we were talking about earlier would be a way to slow it down instead of the 4-way stop. But if a yield sign was there, they would just smoke through that, 8, 9 PM. I mean, it'd be like nothing. So it would definitely have to be at least a stop sign if speed is what you're looking to minimize in a village.
And at 9 o'clock at night, the stop sign becomes a yield sign.
Yeah.
It does,
I've seen where
right?
people drive.
Yeah, people go pretty fast in the evening.
The next question we had on the list has to deal with pedestrian.
Sure, yeah, let me read that.
Sure.
What are the community's thoughts on the pedestrian and greenscape improvements as part of the proposed plan set?
So we heard a little bit earlier about the green space in front of the standard, which just seems like it's something that's desired. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just that crossing it back and forth to Academy Hill, as a parent of 2 Lincoln Academy students, or one who just graduated, but two at one point.
Congratulations.
And I see the kids coming, going, all that, it's currently quite dangerous where they go. So any enhancements to that particular crosswalk, just underscoring that.
And where are they generally going? They're going towards Damascotta.
Yeah, the kids, I mean, in terms of
Yeah,
reducing
that's
demand
right.
too, it means there's
They
no
go straight
trip
through
for
that
me in the
intersection.
afternoon. If it's a safe walk downtown, you meet the kids at the library. It's a great
It is.
way to reduce demand in that intersection too.
So I think one of the things that I think makes it unsafe. Is the fact that you have that Main Street free flow approach, right? It's not a classic 4-way where everybody must stop. And then there's some respect for, generally, there's some respect for pedestrian crossing. Currently, that's free flow. And people just want to go up bills, want to do whatever they want to do. And that's a direct conflict. So I think actually all the alternatives will try to get at that a little bit and make that safe.
there was a comment about the extra green space if you make it a four-way stop, and yes, that would give us a larger green space area, but right now that space is pleasant, totally unutilized. So yes, it's a nice idea, but I don't think that that should be a tipping point.
Or perhaps we could better utilize the park. We could make it something that we could use more.
Yeah, so Jen, I mean, following on my earlier comment, in the comprehensive plan, there was a lot of attention on making more of a downtown and landscaping and using that wide right of way. So I think I'd like to see more of a landscape plan and more consideration of how to take advantage of. I mean, it's unusual that we've got such a wide right of way.
It is.
agree.
And so
Yeah.
this
On that
plan
side,
doesn't
right.
really take advantage of that, and there are, different ways, whether it's landscaping, whether it's more parking or whatever. I think I'd like to see a broader review of that.
Yeah, it looked like trees, right?
Mhm.
Especially on the opposite side. I don't know if there's any opportunity, but
There's somewhat limited because of the gas station.
Yeah.
and how much funds.
Yeah.
And, you've got a lot of interruptions.
yeah.
Yeah, make it nice.
Go ahead.
I did scratch it.
And then,
Just one, so in this iteration, the crosswalk, there's one crosswalk at the top of the hill instead of,
maybe one across here.
okay, so currently there's one at Pump Street and there's one at Glidden Street.
Okay. We can incorporate those back into. the-
Okay, yeah, I think that's important for pedestrians because that's,
And Pump Street.
everybody on Glidden Street. There's a lot of walkers on Glidden Street and on Pump Street, so I think making sure that those crosswalks are still part of things. is
And I think that's
probably-
gonna help too with traffic calming.
Sure.
Several crosswalks.
And there's on-street parking that would help,
Yeah,
crossing the street, yeah.
Yeah,
It makes the distance shorter.
Those green blocks.
the green blocks.
Well, they're not all meant for trees, but wherever we could put trees, those are pretty close to the road. Could we put trees that close to the
I
road?
think I would suggest you put trees behind those. and-
Yeah.
And these are,
Obstruct line.
Can we plant elm trees? Like we used to have?
Don't get the utilities.
Oh, that's
How about
right.
some dwarf apples?
That's why we want to underground them.
Want to pay for it, go for it.
So these same questions will be, as I understand it, on a survey on the town website.
Correct, yes, so I appreciate the number of people that came out tonight. The secret is we're recording this, we're gonna make this available to the public. All the documents are up on the website now, and we intend to send a survey out. So we're gonna try to collect more data from our community in the next 2 weeks and broader community about some of these potential improvements. With these questions, maybe a little more fleshed out after hearing what we've heard tonight. We'll look to collect more information over the course of the next 2 weeks, provide to our consultants, look to bring to this a final draft to the board in early January. Correct?
yes.
Yeah. We talked about 2 weeks ago, I've already lost our conversation, and that was, I think the plan is to bring this to the board in January. With that additional information and those modifications.
Assuming we come to a conclusion, what's the time frame for this all?
This is like step one.
Very early.
Yeah, very
process.
early step one, and maybe Steve, you can talk to what possibilities exist afterwards, but.
So once the town has weighed in on its preferences, DOT's traffic engineers and commissioner get to weigh in on what it thinks is appropriate, and also will be interested in the concept level costs that are provided with the plan, because cost benefit analysis will be part of the equation. And then it will be a matter of thinking about what are the funding sources that could be available given whatever the likely cost and options chosen are. And currently there are a robust number. There's DOT's standard work plan process. And then there are discretionary grants, which have been broadened in the last 4 years or so. In via US DOT. And then finally earmarks or congressionally designated spending. Timeframe is still a pretty long fuse, I'm sad to say. We're probably looking 5 years out or a little more. And that's just the reality of lots of demand, lots of projects all over the state with the same kinds of interests that Newcastle has. So that's the best landscape I can provide at this point.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, the last two questions were thoughts about cycling improvements, which we discussed, but obviously you can discuss more. And then general questions, comments, concerns.
Actually, a question about the cycling, the Mills Road section calls for signage of sharing, sharrows and things
Yep.
like that. Does that make any sense going down River Road and Main Street to River Road? Or is that, I mean, I know River Road is beyond the scope, project scope area, but I mean, could that become a corridor? Is there?
I mean, it could, I mean, again, as Tom had mentioned, I mean, we can stripe that as sharrows through that area as well. Just to recognize that, yes, there's bike use, and this is the, this is the direction, so.
But isn't that also the designated, that bike route?
Yeah, bike route 1, it is bike route 1.
Right.
Road.
I mean, so shared lane markings, we're talking about, I mean, typically they would be allowed on roads posted 35 or less. So, I think, what is it out front here?
35.
35, so you're.
No one goes that speed.
No one goes that, I mean, to be realistic, that would be part of the concern, right? I mean, even though it's posted 35. Because in theory, what you're supposed, as a biker, you're supposed to be sharing the road. You're supposed to be basically using the share lane markings as a guide to where to be on the road with your bike. And so I haven't looked at River Road. Are there any shoulders at all on River Road? No, probably nothing. So it's tricky, right? Those are tricky spots. It's hard. I feel more comfortable with shared lane markings, in our study area, right? We're creating
Yes.
a village sort of setting, slow speeds here. People are concerned about it because, people are probably going faster than 35, doing bicyclists in unsafe situations.
But if it's something we want to add to the areas that we're impacting, we certainly have those.
But you said there are sharrows on the plan for Mills.
Yes.
Road.
we do show them.
And that, has a completely different, currently physical.
Yeah.
Condition than, River Road. So, not that it's a bad idea, but.
Yeah, no, just-
More considerations here might need to.
Oh, no,
More
absolutely,
than
just, in
That's
thinking
all.
about connectivity.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, we sort of, the consensus, at least in this room, was to not have bike lanes on that short section of Main Street because it doesn't go anywhere. But we now do have a short sharrows section that doesn't go anywhere. I mean, again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, but just trying to think about how to make it.
Yeah, I'd be more inclined to try to get at the sharing of the road through signage. On the road, right, so there's signage that basically says it's same information, share the road, those types of things, there'd be a signage.
But then on the section of Main Street between River Road and Academy Hill, we could add sharrows.
You
to
could,
that.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
If, the speed.
I just have one more comment, and that has to do with trees. And I know that trees are traffic calming measures, right? And, we're in conflict, that's in conflict with CMP, who keeps cutting down our trees. And just did that on River Road, just took down lots and lots of trees and lots of limbs. Now we're just at a super highway, and they go very, very fast on this road. So that's something we.
Well, if the overhead power lines, let's say on certain sections of these roads are on one side, we could look at tree opportunities on the other side. We can strategically place trees too.
I just, and maybe it's a question, and a comment is, like, these are just kind of concept plans of, will this intersection work? Does this streetscape generally, does this fit? But as was mentioned, like, this is not gonna be, not starting construction next week, so I'm thinking like, there's gonna be some, we can refine and add nuance to these plans and figure out where are good spots for street trees. You know, if we want to embellish and use that full right of way. It seems like there's still opportunity to do that before we put a shovel. Am I off?
No, you're on it. And even minor tweaks could happen, you know, through the process, right? I mean, this is just planning level feasibility study part of the VPI program, to get an idea what we're talking about. DOT wants some idea about cost. There'll be some contingencies in that cost estimate that gets at some of this stuff. But when you go to design, that's when you're really going to drill into sort of streetscape and understanding all the things that would go into it. So it's.
There are improvements that can be made to the concept plans before it's brought to the board based on comments we hear.
Yeah.
But the final version, it's a long way though.
Right, that's so I think a lot of the details that we're talking about are still, like, I want to keep thinking about them. To your point, Rob, about the bike, the sharrows. One of the issues is, and I know there was at some point a comprehensive kind of bike ped plan between Darmstadt and Newcastle. It's like it doesn't make sense to put in a short bike lane. But at some point, we do need to start figuring out, like, how do we want to have a actual bikeable network that goes throughout the town? So how this fits into something like that is worth thinking about. So it may not be included in this, but all of these little things, I'm hoping that we continue to talk about and entertain.
Can I just add one more comment about the, you know, we kind of delineated this kind of VPI zone, which basically starts at the north side of or west side of the River Road interchange here. But, you know, the off ramp and that whole sort of triangle there just feels like an interstate interchange there. You know, there's a lot of center median there that's just grass. I mean, is that a place that, you know, should see some trees or something that kind of, you know, gives us the atmosphere that you're entering into, you know, we're not coming off the interstate, but so I don't know if that's, you know, palatable by the DOT or not, but it's just, you know, maybe that whole off-ramp is part of the VPI.
One other thing that we had mentioned here, yeah, and I think that's a good idea. I think we can certainly mention that, but what about street lighting? I mean, we talked about, you know, decorative street lighting. Is that something that's important to the community?
Yeah, it'd be great.
You think that'd be any?
Well, yeah, we started it on Academy Hill, so it really.
It started there. Okay,
Yeah.
nice. All right.
Well, yeah, and I also have to say there's a group of people who really want to keep light pollution, you know, reduce light pollution. So I think neighbors would have to be involved with that. Because I know the Academy Hill lighting got a lot of pushback. Because
Yeah, we
may like it,
did
but
not put
if
it
you're
on Mills
living-
Road because of that, those comments.
Yeah.
But on this down the Main Street section.
I just want to add one proviso about cost going forward, because it's important to mention. This planning study was shared equally 50-50 between Newcastle and Maine DOT. Going forward, when this project gets to the design phase, the DOT will ask the town to come up with 10% of that cost. And also 10% of the construction cost, whatever that may be. That's a general principle. And I think the department thinks it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Overall, but it's an important thing for folks to know about upfront.
Can I ask a question about that? You talked about there's money available like in the next year because of the situation we have right now with that, but then we wouldn't be able to start for maybe 5 years. Do we get that money committed? Or just in a queue for construction? Or Or is that 5-year delay hurting our opportunity to get that, I'm like, do we get that money committed and then we wait till we can get in line to get the work done, or?
Well, the commitment is sort of a matter of how the department figures out where this project should be and what source of money it will be competitive for. So if it goes through our standard work plan process, that's 3 years at a minimum. And yet there's a general delay that probably would make it more like 5 years or so. If people thought it was very competitive for one of USDOT's discretionary grant programs, that it could be submitted in the next year or two, perhaps. But there are other communities with other projects like this, and DOT has to decide which is likely to be seen as most competitive at the federal level. So there's sort of some jockeying and some strategizing that goes on in-house. And with earmarks, it's the same kind of process. What member of Congress from Maine might be interested in this project? So it's hard to tease out exactly what the timing and the chronology will be. That will begin to become more clear once the project is complete and it gets submitted within the department. That's the most I can say, really.
No questions? 2 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. On time.